Greetings. I'm documentary filmmaker Joe Fabb. Compassion and Choice has asked me to help introduce you to a number of physicians whose practices are in one of the states where medical aid in dying is authorized under law. Dr. Charlotte Charfen is a board-certified emergency medicine physician and a writer and educator with over 2 decades of clinical practice caring for patients who are facing life and death issues and choices. She is based in Hawaii, where medical aid in dying has been authorized since the beginning of 2019.
Medical aid in dying for me is a gateway to talking about death. I feel like it is a tool that is very powerful to get people to open up about the thing that most Americans fear, which is their mortality, especially in my specialty, right? Emergency medicine. It was an unspoken rule that death was an enemy and that we were there to defeat that enemy at all costs. And unfortunately, sometimes those costs are much worse to the patient. And so, when you're young and you are thinking, okay, I'm here to save everyone's life, that's the training. That's the idea. That's what your brain is a bit geared towards. And so when you don't do that, you feel like a failure. It's kind of across the board in emergency medicine, and I'd say even critical care medicine. But what I learned as I started to become my own person, right? I stepped outside of training. I started my real training. I think I became really good at having really difficult conversations very quickly, because in my mind, it wasn't fair to the patient. It wasn't fair to the family. It wasn't fair to the staff taking care of these patients, not to have a real conversation about where they were in their living and dying.
Straight talk about the end of life. It's important to recognize that the movement making medical aid in dying available in state after state is largely a bottom-up movement. That is, it didn't come about because of some new scientific breakthrough or discovery, but rather has been generated by patients looking at what they want at the end of their lives and discussing it with their physicians. Dr. Charfen told me about this happening with one of her patients in the emergency room, to whom she had just given a terminal metastatic cancer diagnosis.
So this man had just met me, and now I'm delivering a terminal diagnosis to him. And I was taken aback because, one, he didn't seem surprised. I think he knew something was wrong. But two, after I gave him this diagnosis, his first question to me was, what do you think about death with dignity? What do you think about that law, that medical aid in dying law? And I had to be honest with him. At the time, I didn't work in a state that had it. And so I told him point blank, I don't know. I don't know what I think about this because, one, I've never even been asked the question by a patient. And I've never lived in a place where it was possible. But Larry was the first person that really made me think about the law. So he was my introduction to medical aid in dying. And he was the one that got me educated, I should say. And it was about 2 years later that Hawaii actually got the law. I had no idea for 20 years people had been trying to get the legislation passed. When I'm talking to lawmakers, which I love to do, there are concerns, a lot of concerns that come up. The one I probably hear the most is that it is a misconception for sure among a lot of people, not just lawmakers, that somebody that's making this request, are they just doing it off the cuff? Is this just out of desperation? And what I would say about that is I've never had that happen once. If anything, this law requires that people make a very conscious decision. The way all of these laws are written across our country, they're having to really, really think deeply about their values, what they want. And that to me is the beauty of the law. So the misconception that people just come to it, I'm scared, I'm going to do this. It doesn't work that way. And we've got decades and decades of experience showing that it doesn't. When I'm speaking to a physician that is not yet prescribing medical aid in dying, there are concerns that come up, and I try to address those. And I think that is super important to recognize. It's okay if you are a physician and you ethically cannot prescribe, but please understand your job is to support the patient and their autonomy. And patients get to have their own beliefs. That's what we're here to do, is say, these are your choices, and you get to decide what works for you. Not what works for me or works for that lawmaker or this other physician down the street. What works for you? What supports you in your living and your dying?